Hello. Our story begins in the sands of Tatooine, barren and desolate. This planet was for the strong-willed, and in the middle of those sands there were burning fires. Dusk was upon the system. 2 suns, ones that stood dormant over the planet, sunk beneath the horizon. Under the shadow of smoke, fire, soot, and ash, there was a child, the sole survivor of an attack on Hutt property. The child was not much older than an infant, a being with no concept of the life around him or the chaos that left him without his family. Anakin Skywalker was born of Shmi and the Force, but in transit from one location to another, the Hutt transport was attacked by Tatooine gang, one that would soon face the wrath of Jabba's thugs. They only raided the transport for riches, hoping to use said riches to buy their way off of Tatooine and escape the clutches of the Hutt syndicate. They were sorely mistaken. Despite these gangsters finding nothing but a bunch of slaves, they decided that there would be no better fate than to execute them and burn their vessel. The Hutts would kill these slaves anyways, so might as well not give them any hope for survival. The gangsters burned everything, and the only thing they missed was the child. With the desert suns gone, the planet turned into almost frigid temperatures. It's why so many of the inhabitants needed long cloth, not just for protection from the suns, but warmth in the night. Due to the raging fires of the late evening, and the smoke still billowing out, not just an ugly gray cloud, but the perfumes of death and destruction, it caught the attention of some local inhabitants. Tusken Raiders never really picked on the Hutts. Sometimes they had their turf wars, but they never went further than that. Despite the Hutts being ruthless, they were semi-compassionate to the locals of the system. Jabba was the reasoning for this. He believed the Raiders added extra flair to the Boonty Eve Classic and some other Hutt Syndicate-sponsored events in town. Whenever Jabba learned of this, he knew it wasn't the Raiders. They never went after targets this large unless it was encroaching on Tusken territory with the intention to settle, which the Hutts never actively did. The Tuskens never attacked unless provoked. This could be in fear or simply hostility. A local clan of Tuskens who were migrating to the other side of Tatooine to avoid the harshness of summer under the Twin Suns found this wreck. They investigated, purely out of curiosity. It was clear that the perpetrators were gone, so they went about and looked at the wreckage. They buried the dead out of respect, and as they were doing this, the chieftainess of the clan found the child crawling amongst the still burning fires. It was clear the infant was in a state of fight or flight, and due to how helpless they could be, it was flight. She walked over to the child and knelt down, the baby not noticing her coming from behind. One of the raiders came up beside her and looked at the child, asking what they should do. Zira, the chieftainess, looked back down at the child and gave a couple of hand signals. Instead of verbally communicating, the raider got up and ran over to a bantha, retrieving something and coming back over. Zira took it and walked around the child, stepping in front and getting down and crossing her legs. She let out 2 pieces. One was an heirloom, the other was water. In the tradition of the Krayt clan, if they were to discover an individual lost in the desert, they were to present them with 2 choices. Each one had a meaning, and whatever the child chose would be his fate. The infant was clueless to this little game. The stars started to twinkle overhead, and the 3 moons started to beam out. The glimmer of the moons reflected off the heirloom, and the child moved in the direction of it. Zira again moved her hands, and her raider fetched another object. As they were doing that, she looked down and picked the child up, while holding the heritage piece, and looked for a name. Zira was semi-familiar with Hutt markings, and with them, she'd be able to derive a name. What she found was the name of Anakin Skywalker, but the sky part didn't make any sense. She didn't recognize the word due to a wound in the marking, so she believed Anakin was a desert walker. It was a myth among their people, not just Krayt clan, but the various tribes of the people across the planet. The one that was a walker of the desert was the individual that was destined to unite the tribes of Tatooine, to bring them together into one nation. She smiled and wrapped the heirloom around Anakin's neck and told the boy that she would guide him until he could stand on his own. The other raider brought back a satchel, one designed to carry infants, and the chieftainess wrapped it over her back and sat Anakin into it. The test of the heritage piece and the water was one of destiny. If an individual chose water, then they would have it, satisfy their short-term quench for thirst. However, their longevity in the desert was never certain, something or decision that likely would cause them to die in a future the Tuskens would never see. If the individual chose the heirloom, like Anakin, then they would be accepted by the tribe until the desired time to leave. If Anakin wanted to abandon the clan, then he may. If he wanted to remain, then he may. It was entirely up to the individual. Out of the few people that chose the peace, none of them stayed long term. Not with Krayt Clan or any of the other various tribes across the planet that also did this. Not all of these tribes followed this method, but it was respected amongst the more understanding individuals. Zira, after her clan investigated the wreckage and buried the dead, would address Anakin as a Nunnehi, or in basic, an individual who could live anywhere or forever. Not just a desert walker, but something more. Their tribe would continue their migration and the chiefess would take care of little Annie. She protected him as if he were her own. Her other children respected her kindness and compassion. It was what made her a fine leader. Their tribe would set up on the far side of the Dune Sea, avoiding the summer suns and camping in a rock formation to avoid tribal wars with some of the more violent people in the sands. Krayt Clan was one of many clans of the same name across the Dune Seas. They were smaller in size due to the separation. The name was all too familiar due to the legendary Krayt dragons of the planet. It was once the largest tribe of all the Tuskens, but due to infighting they eventually broke off, different sects of the same family forming their own iteration of the Krayt Clan. Some were more violent, others more peaceful, and the rest either got into skirmishes with gangs or pirates and died off. Zira was generations removed from her forefathers' fight, but the tale was one she knew like the back of her hand, as all chiefnesses and chieftains must know, not just the legacy of their people, but their rituals and, of course, their traditions. Over the years, young Anakin would grow as the son of his adopted mother. He would be treated as the other quote-unquote royal members of her family. While there were no discrepancies between her and those under her, the chieftainess's family was a family that would come to rule the clan. Anakin, due to never having any previous knowledge of his real mother or life outside the Tuskens, stayed with them. As a child, he would be raised with two other children, one of them presumed to be born within a sunset of him. Her name was Dar. The other child was born on the first full moon of the third moon in the sky, or in other words, 3 weeks before Anakin and Dar. His name was Raka. These three really got along with each other really well, and they adored their time with one another. This is because they were the youngest children in the clan. They played, they learned, they understood, and they grew together. The clan was a family, and these children were treated as such. Raka, being the oldest, always played the role of the toughest in the group, and while Anakin was the son of the elder, he never acted above anyone else. He understood the law of their clan, and he respected each of his peers. Zira watched over her boy with satisfaction. He was one of them. He conducted each of the coming-of-age rituals alongside Raka and Dar, though it was clear from a young age that Anakin and Dar had a strong emotional bond with one another, something that pleased Zira. She had always made it clear to her child that he was permitted to leave if he wanted. While Anakin had no concept of the world outside of the clan, their traditions, and the movements of other Tusken tribes, he also had no intention to leave it, to seek a greater adventure. The life of a raider was harsh. The Tuskens preyed on each other, the strongest tribe survived, and everyone else in between was left to be scavengers like Krayt Clan, or to wither away and die in the barren seas of the sand. When Anakin was a teenager, he watched Raka take his spirit walk, and then he was up. Anakin's spirit walk was worrisome for him. He had high expectations. The clan wanted to see what he would come back with, and if he would ever be a successful heir to the seat. But when he went out, all he saw was water, telling his mom and her people that he saw vast amounts of it, so much so that he was drowning. Zira wasn't disappointed, but she was confused. No one had ever had a vision of water, being that their planet was no longer a water world, but this knowledge was unknown to the Tuskens. It was far beyond their scientific capability. They were simply secrets to this world that their elders could not educate them with. The chieftainess told her young boy that she trusted what he saw, but believed that he should attempt again once Dar finishes her own spirit walk. Anakin agreed. Though when one is to redo their spirit walk, they must do it differently. Their second one wasn't done with hallucinogens, rather patience. Redone spirit walks consisted of an individual going out into the sands alone, spending a day in the desert, surviving with only one small container of water and the cloth on their back. They must walk until they stop and dig a hole. What they find, if anything, would reveal what their path was. If they dug and found an artifact, then they were to become an elder. If they found an animal, then they were to become any number of things. They were creatures that lived under the sand. If it was small and docile, then they were to become a caregiver for banthas, for example. If they found a massive beast, then they'd have to kill it and deliver its head, as proof that they were to become a warrior. There were a couple other selective things that could come from it, but those were some of the general examples. Anakin and Raka would watch Dar as she went on her own spirit walk. Hers would have a tree and a vessel flying above it. It was a show that she was giving and adventurous. The tree represented the strong roots she descended from and the ones that she would eventually bear. The vessel was a representation of the distance she would go in her life. She'd become a great seeker for their tribe, an individual who would keep it safe from the warring factions of Tuskens amongst the sands. Anakin and Raka would spend the night with her, talking by the campfire and snacking on some recently caught meat. They would joke quietly, and Raka would tease Anakin about his inability to desert walk, joking that he wouldn't ever find his path due to his eyes always being so fixated on the stars. Dar shoved him a little, and he rolled his tongue to mimic breaking the wind sounds as he got up and moved away from them, wishing them a good night as he was off to bed. Raka was to become an elder, one of the individuals who passed on knowledge. He would never be a chieftain, because he didn't have the birthright like Anakin and his siblings did. Raka was pleased with this, expressing that he always knew he was destined for greatness. Of course, this again in a teasing tone. Dar and Anakin sat by the fire as she asked him if he believed he would find his purpose. Anakin looked to the stars and smiled, nodding his head. She grabbed his chin and lowered it, so it could face the fire, as she told him that he was always looking towards what seemed to be so unattainable. He agreed, but he asked her if there was any point in reducing his ability to go. She asked him what he meant, and he shrugged his shoulders. He asked her what she thought was out there. The city dwellers knew how to fly. There had to be a vast civilization out there somewhere, planets full of trees, water, fire, cities, who knows? Dar chuckled and told him that his imagination was so wonderful, and he was probably right. But she wanted to see him succeed. She knew he was destined for greatness, like his siblings. One day the tribe would be his, and she was hopeful that Anakin could be the greatest among his siblings. Not for nothing, Dar didn't really like them. They were, as she always gestured with her hands to her head and flipping them outwards, or, in verbal, stupid. They were dull, to say the least. Anakin was not. He took after his mother's finer qualities, and Dar believed that if his siblings got command of Krayt Clan, they would lose touch with what made them survivors. Anakin nodded and calmed her heart, promising in a sincere tone that he would find his path. His spirit walk would cleanse his heart and his mind. When he returned, she would see that he was worthy. She nudged his head and gestured with her hands, moving them outwards and around as she looked up. He knew what this meant. She always said it in sign. He was destined for greatness. Anakin believed it. Dar was his biggest believer, and while she did tease him, she didn't choose to after he was the only one without success during his spirit walk. The following day, Chieftain Azira would gather the tribe after they finished their daily tasks, and they would see Anakin off on his journey. It would be one that started at dusk and ended at dusk the following day. Anakin wrapped his cloth over his skin and smiled to his mother and his friends as he told them that he looked forward to bringing them the revelations of his completed journey. They wished him well as his mother slapped the ground with her staff and began the spirit walk for her son. The staff would be pulled from the ground upon his return, indicating the end of his journey. Dar and Raka stood side by side, wondering what may come from this for Anakin. Raka may have been playful with Anakin, but he really hoped that his friend would find success this time around. Anakin started out into the desert with a wooden stick, one collected during his childhood years. When he was a boy, the stick was too big for him. As a young adult, at the age of 19, the stick was the perfect size. He walked into the desert, feeling his feet sink into the sand and the cool breeze of the wind brush his wrists, the only bare skin he had to show. Anakin loved nights like this. He enjoyed digging his feet under the sand and allowing the coolness to wash over them like an ocean. Young Annie walked throughout the night and eventually started a small fire. He didn't find his place to dig yet as he lay by his fire, and he looked up and wondered what fate beset the galaxy. What travesties or heroes were out there moving between the stars? Anakin smiled at the thought of his own journey, and when the morning came, he continued. And by midday, when the twin suns were at their peak, he took his first sip of water and stopped, finding a place to dig, and he started. What he wasn't prepared for was what he found. He placed his bare hands into the sand and pulled up gently, allowing the sand particles to slip from his grip into where they once lay. He moved the sand to the side and released it as he looked down. He saw a small stem. This confused him, so he pulled at it gently and uncovered the area around it. He found a black-seeded melon. These naturally grew across the planet, though they typically showed up in batches. They hid under dunes, which is where the Tuskens usually collected them and stocked up on them. Anakin was simply standing in an area of straight desert. There weren't hills or anything around him, just emptiness. He pulled the melon out and put it into his satchel. Worry started to fill his body. Was he meant for nothing? Would his mother banish him from the clan? He was fearful. This coming-of-age moment was very important to his clan. Anakin looked at the pouch again, to make sure he wasn't imagining things, and he was left with sadness. Maybe he wasn't his mother's child after all. He by this point was well aware of his adoption, but still, Zira always called him her child, and now, maybe this proved that he was something else. He made his way back to the clan so that he may show them his disappointing result. As the day started getting closer to dusk, he could smell ember. It was odd, but as he got closer, he could see smoke emanating from where his tribe was, so he ran forward with haste, dropping his satchel and grabbing the wooden stick for protection. He came over the hill and saw the camp burning. His mother's children were slaughtered around the camp. The staff that was in the ground was no longer there, and his people were gone. Anakin called out their names, looking for them, but finding no sign, aside from the few of them who fought back and died, if they even fought back at all. It looked like his brothers and sisters were executed. One of the elders was killed too, but no one else. Anakin fell to his knees with tears slipping from his eyes. His journey must have been stopped short, and that meant, traditionally, that he was no longer part of the tribe. But his mother wouldn't do that to him, would she? Would she lose her children and banish Anakin to save her people? That much was unknown, but Anakin did as he must, to at least bring himself peace. He buried his sisters and his brothers and the elder. He laid them to rest, and then he promised them that he would find their clan and he would bring them home. When he did this, he never referred to the clan as his own, only theirs. Anakin, before the suns fully went to sleep, saw the tracks and began tracing them. Before he left, he grabbed a satchel and a pike created by one of the warriors. His tracking went until he passed out from exhaustion, somewhere in the middle of the desert. When he woke up, the twin suns were awake and beating down on his back. Anakin got to his feet and looked around. He could see the same trail that he was following before he passed out. He could feel dried tears on his face, making his eyes stiff to open when he first woke up. He started to follow the trail again, thinking about his people. They were always non-violent, but they fought when they needed to. He wondered what could have done this. From his understanding, these trails were other raiders, which didn't make any sense. Tuskens weren't known for capturing tribes. Mercilessly killing them, sure, but not taking them. Krayt clan avoided these conflicts very well. Zira was great at it, and Dar would have made a fine seeker, making sure the clan avoided troubles just like this. He worried for what beset them. On the third day of his hunt for his clan, he was hit with a nasty sandstorm. Luckily, he was wearing his mask and could tread the sands with it, but it was one of the worst he had ever encountered. Every couple steps, his legs would be swept out from under him. Half of the time he was crawling, until he almost walked himself into a sarlacc pit. Luckily, he saw one of its dormant tentacles hanging out of his hole, and he knew to avoid it. If only the sarlacc had a brain. After the terrible sandstorm, the tracks were missing, and Anakin was alone in the desert. He only had two sources of water, his last little gulp of water and his black-seeded melon, though Anakin didn't want to break it, hoping that his mother, if she was still alive, would understand what this meant. As he was trailing his same path, he saw something. It was an heirloom, one similar to the one around his neck. Zira created her own version of the heirloom she gave to Anakin, and she must have dropped it. This singular action gave him all the hope in the world. Maybe he could save his people. Anakin continued treading through the desert until evening came again, and he was out of water. This was his last chance before ruining the melon that he found on his spirit walk. As he continued, he found a rock formation and decided to scale it. When he got to the top, he looked down in awe. It was a huge tribe, the biggest he'd ever seen. The campfires were lit up like stars in the night sky. Anakin looked down and he could see guards moving about the camp, their pikes in their hands and their eyes fixated on the darkness away from the camp. Anakin wasn't sure what this was. He could see red flags draped around the outskirts of this. He thought and remembered his mother telling Raka, Dar, and he, when they were children, to run away from Red. She said that his name was Chieftain Khan, and he was the conqueror. He slaughtered and he never took prisoners. If this was indeed him, then his morals had changed. This wasn't just a clan or a tribe, this was a nation. He was establishing a dominant tribe, one that would last under his rule. Khan was young when he rose to power, the child chief they called him, killing the largest warrior in his clan and never looking back or turning down a fight. There wasn't a peaceful bone in his body. He preyed on anything, and it was clear he was behind this. In the middle of the camp there was a massive tent, guards and cloaked individuals moving about outside of it. That must have been his. Anakin looked for anyone he might recognize, and then he saw someone who looked very similar to Dar, but he couldn't tell. As the night went on, he snuck down and avoided detection as he ran into his clan's camp. They'd survived. It was a miracle. The first person he saw was his beloved Dar, who upon seeing him, jumped up and ran to embrace him, holding him and not letting go. She was usually a night owl, so it wasn't uncommon for her to be awake at this time of night. Dar released and let go to take a look at Anakin, cupping his face and asking if it was really him. He nodded his head, smiling, as they put their hands on the back of each other's necks and pulled their temples together before releasing. Dar explained everything to him, as she brought him into their camp so he could see Raka and his mother, both of which being overly relieved to see him. The story of their capture went as such. Shortly after Anakin left, they were attacked at night. Anakin's siblings went to defend the camp, and they were thrown back and captured. Zira came out to stop the raiders, but they surrounded the camp, igniting their tents with fire and dismounting from their speeders. They then told Zira to make a choice, sacrifice her entire clan or sacrifice her children. The elder of the clan stepped forth, telling them to take his life instead, which they did, driving a bayonet into his neck. Zira's children made the choice for her, knowing that she would sacrifice her clan for her children if she needed to. They understood that Krayt clan needed to survive. So next to the elder, all of Zira's children were killed, and in a way to show that they did not care about her rituals, they ripped her staff from the ground and forced her to carry it. They were transported across the desert, and now they were here. They told Anakin that Khan was building something. They didn't know what, but he continued to reference this as the Tusken Nation, the one that was loyal to him and him alone. He talked about controlling the twin suns and dominating Tatooine. He was also obsessed with some sort of digging. They weren't sure what it was, but he was digging a hole into the valley. Anakin asked what they meant, and Dar told Anakin that this valley went on for several hundred miles, or something like that. They were cutting a hole in the edge of the valley over here, but no one knew why. All they knew was Khan was employing his soldiers to collect more slave labor from around the planet, but it seemed like he already collected all the tribes. Anakin asked if that meant that every tribe was here, and Dar nodded her head. He wondered why they were digging at the edge of the valley, and Raka spoke up, telling Anakin that 3 of the major cities of Tatooine were a little west of the valley, so whatever it was that Khan was doing was trying to get to the city dwellers for some reason. Anakin changed the topic and told them that he would break them out of here. Zira wasn't optimistic about these odds, telling Anakin that he could get everyone killed, but he pulled from his satchel the melon, telling his mom that it had to mean something. She didn't have to believe that his plan would work, but she just needed to believe in him. Zira told Anakin that she did believe in him, but she wasn't going to lose another child, let alone her last. Anakin promised her that she wouldn't, as he asked Raka and Dar if they were willing to follow him. Ironically, it was Raka, the one who always played it cool, that was fearful, but he joined after Dar volunteered without hesitation. Anakin promised that they would be back, as they did the same thing Anakin did to get in, to get out. As they moved away from the camps, they treaded the sands without a source of light. There weren't many things said. The entire event was traumatizing for them, but Anakin led the way, until he slipped. Raka and Dar fell after him as they tripped into a hole they could not see, before falling into the belly of the beast. Luckily for them, this Sarlacc had died. It was all cleared out. A couple bones still around, but all that was here was an empty cave. Dar grabbed a bone and wrapped some cloth from her arm around it, before using 2 stones to ignite a fire. The other 2 repeated the same process and lit up the cave they were in. It was so weird. The Sarlacc pit was like a cave system, especially once the beast died out or was killed by whatever. Anakin asked about the movements of the clans during the days, to which Raka explained everything he understood and saw. The clans got to work during the day, all of them operating under slave labor. Khan would show his face maybe once a week to bolster morale, at least according to some of the other tribes that had been captured months before. As it seemed, these tribes were working away for the majority of the day. It was really odd. Raka followed Anakin and asked him if he really felt like the Nahai. It had been years since he'd heard that word. He looked back to Raka and told his friend that he felt like something was wrong here. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. All he knew is that he would like to free their people. Raka stopped and said that maybe Anakin was meant to do more than lead Krayt clan. Dar and Anakin turned over as Raka expressed in his sincerest tone that maybe his purpose for having water in both of his spirit visions was meant to embody a path unseen by anyone else. Anakin stopped Raka and told him that he wouldn't be able to kill Khan if he tried. He was here for Krayt clan. If the others could be saved, then he would do it. If not, then it was out of their control. They continued along the caves for what felt like hours. There was no telling how much time had passed. As they walked through the caves, Anakin stopped. There was a heavy gust of wind and the smell of water. Not just a little bit, but a lot. Anakin and his friends moved forward as they moved around to see scales, and from behind it, they saw a wall of water. It was splashing around behind the tail of the scaled creature. Anakin, Dar, and Raka walked over to it and felt it. The water was cool like night. Raka removed his mask and took a sip, feeling the refreshing water fill his body with chills. He smiled and told them that it was unlike anything he ever drank before. Dar and Anakin did the same, and they looked to each other with amazement. They picked their torches up and continued moving about and finding an exit. At the edge of the exit, there were explosive lines. They could tell by the smell of gunpowder. Then it clicked. Khan was going to destroy the city dwellers. Raka looked at Anakin and asked if he thought that was right, but that was the only plausible answer. Raka thought this was good though, but Anakin stopped him. This was the ocean from his spirit walk. This water could give brand new life to Tatooine. If it was free from this hole in this valley and allowed to spread out, it would destroy the cities, sure, but what about an infinite water source for every creature? If they let it flood, then it would evaporate, just like their black-seeded melons in the sun as Anakin picked up his. Khan could likely detonate this and destroy all the tribes if he wanted, but why do that when he could rule all of Tatooine for himself by destroying the city dwellers? He could create a dynasty loyal to his name, establish a legacy that could be written by his heirs, as he would be seen as their victorious leader of their regime. Anakin told Raka and Dar to get back to camp. He was going to figure out how to release this flood. He made them promise that they would try and save the other tribes, and they did. Raka and Dar went through an exiting chamber before sunrise and got back to camp before anyone noticed. While they were exhausted, they got to work immediately, informing Zira, who passed the information to the rest of Krayt clan and then afterwards the other tribes that she could. Anakin during this time broke apart his walking stick and carved out some pebbles from the walls. He used everything he could to attach them. Anakin could tell by the feeling on his bare hand that he was next to a Krayt dragon, one that was sleeping, the same beast that his clan was named after. He restructured his stick to work as a speaker, something that could communicate with the beast. Krayt clan was named after those who once formed a bond with these dragons, though to what extent, the elders did not know. All Anakin had were the stories passed down from Zira and her forefathers before her. He just hoped that this information didn't get lost in the generational game of telephone. Anakin walked over to the edge of the cave and pulled the bombs off the wall very dedicatedly and moved them away from the magnificent animal. He was hopeful that he had given the tribes enough time to prepare. As he moved over to the Krayt dragon and found its face, he moved close to it and gently pressed his bare hand against her. Anakin stepped back, not more than 10 feet from the animal's sleeping eye. As he took his stick and waved it gently across the ground, a vibrating hum radiated out of it, and it sung through the echoing chambers that the dragon called home for however long she was here. Anakin kept doing it, ever so gently switching where the stick was. He moved it clockwise around him, as he created a circular echo of movement, and then, when he stopped, the eye slowly lifted. The dragon was awoken. Anakin looked into the emerald glow of this beautiful creature's vision. He was left in awe as they locked eyes for a solitary moment. Anakin's mouth hung open as he continued to shake the staff and allowed it to sing. He stepped forward cautiously as the pupil of the beast tracked his every movement. As Anakin got closer, there were rattles from the animal's bones. Anakin got within arm's reach, still repeating the same motions. as he placed his hand on the creature's face and whispered to her, calling the dragon an inhabitant of the Twin Suns, same as his people, and pleading that she help him free his people from the grips of Chieftain Khan. He then told her that Tatooine was ready for the gift of the water she protected, but it was the dragon's gift to bestow to her fellow sand dwellers. A slight noise was heard as the eyes closed and blinked once more. Its mouth opened, and as it did, a hole was created, revealing the twin suns of the morning. There was an orange haze crossing the sky. Miles away, the slaves were getting ready to work, preparing to start ripping apart the valley walls. Anakin looked at the animal as she started turning around. The rumbling in the ground only meant one thing. Anakin used his staff to climb up the hole and escape to the side of the valley, where he scaled the mountainous rocks. He looked back down to see a ground fill with tremors. According to the mythos of Krayt Clan, the dragon would free their people from their search for water. It was a little saying that was told to children, one they would always remember as it played in Anakin's mind for the 100th time. By 2 suns a day, by 3 moons a night, our dragon will show us the way, gifts of wisdom and might, so that her golden dunes may strengthen her kin, and we her people may resume what she can only begin. He smiled to himself, always wondering what it was that would resume. Maybe the elders once knew more about this world than they do now. Anakin continued to climb until he got to the top and a monstrous roar was released, before the ground shook and from miles down the way, he could see water cresting over the surface. Anakin had never seen so much water before that he backed up. It was insanity. It was a tsunami, and he hoped his people were moving. The rumbling over the ground got their attention, and Khan's scouts reported to him that there was trouble, but his slaves were already moving out. Khan had been popping local gangsters and pirates, stealing their tech and using it to fuel his empire. Now he was about to lose all of it, because of some random unknown boy. Khan and his guards ran from the camps below, as all of his captured clans did the same, led by their leaders to climb. That was the word each tribe screamed out: climb. Anakin, on the other hand, was sprinting towards the people, and he arrived shortly after the waters engulfed everything below, filling up the entire valley and not overflowing not by 1 inch. The valley, which was miles long, fit this ocean perfectly. If Khan broke down his walls, it would have shredded the cities of the planet, and now they were left with the city dwellers. Khan took his weapon and demanded to know who did this, but no one knew, until a young man ran to Krayt Clan and embraced his friends and mother. He told them he was so worried, as they were embracing him and holding him, relieved he had survived. A rope was thrown around his neck and pulled backwards as he fell and hit his head, before being dragged to the middle of an open space. Khan stood with his few guards at bay, keeping whoever might attack away from their leader. The Tusken King bent down and grabbed Anakin by the neck, asking him why he decided to destroy this nation. Anakin shook his head, telling him that they were stolen clans, not of his control. Khan smiled and laughed as he looked to the others around him, before throwing Anakin to the ground. Anakin stabbed, smacking the surface of the rock. Raka, Dar, and Zira moved to the edge, but Khan's guards stopped them. He pointed to them and told them that they would watch this child die. Khan told Anakin to get up and fight him. There'd be no satisfaction in killing a weakling that never attempted to fight. But Anakin wasn't given a chance to fight. Every time he moved to get up, he was kicked over, punched in the face, or thrown across the rock formation. The waves of the newly formed ocean crashed against the walls, as Khan waved his hands in the air, calling himself King of the Tusken Raiders. This was his nation, his empire. He looked down at Anakin, who had blood dripping from his face as he coughed. His body ached, and he was far beyond tired, having not slept in who knows how long. He looked over to Khan, who grabbed his face with strength and pulled him up. Anakin tried to fight it, but Khan never gave him a chance, shoving Anakin back into his own stick. He looked over at the Tusken King as he turned to his people and told them that they would continue his work, and when it was done, they would control all of Tatooine. The twin suns would be theirs to control, and no one, not the Hutts, not the gangsters, not the city dwellers, would stop him. Anakin was facing the ground, pushing himself up with his elbows as he heaved again, grabbing his stick and shaking it. He let out a guttural "huh," which got Khan's attention, as if the rattling in the broken stick wasn't enough to irritate him. Anakin turned around and slowly rose to his feet as he released another guttural noise. While hoisting his stick up in the air, he hoped that this would work. Anything for his people. Khan grabbed a spear from off the ground and smiled under his mask, telling the insignificant boy that he would die for nothing. Khan pulled the spear back and moved forward. As he did, the rattling in Anakin's stick echoed out, and he told the boy that his insufferable stick would be drowning with him and his forgotten legacy. Khan threw his spear forward, jabbing at Anakin, and as he did, the Krayt Dragon's mouth wrapped around Khan and crunched down on him, stopping the spear and breaking his body. His cries of agony echoed out as he was dragged down into the depths of the ocean. Anakin stood shakily as he raised his hand in the air and told the tribes that they were free. From one of the tribes, a chieftain called out the word Nunahai. Another tribal elder did the same, and another. Before Anakin could really even comprehend, the tribes were calling him the individual who lived forever, the one that walked between life and death. He was the Nunahai, the Desert Walker. Anakin didn't just free Krayt Clan, he freed them all, and he brought infinite water to Tatooine. A long-forgotten mythos of their people stated that there would be one to unite the people of the Twin Suns, and when they did, they would have their water, they would have their oceans, for their people would finally be worthy of it. While it might not seem like Tatooine was worthy of an ocean, it would soon prove that it was. The revelation of a several hundred-mile-long ocean would give the people a reason to not trust the Hutts. In the years following the Clone Wars, Jabba and his thugs would be forced from Tatooine, no longer able to claim residence on the no longer desert world. During this time, before the revolution that pushed the Hutts from Tatooine, Chieftain Anakin unified the desert people. Thousands of Tusken Raiders called him their leader. While he only really cared about Krayt Clan, they would rebuild. They collectively would grow together. They were stronger together. These Tuskens would have peace, and they could have it with the city dwellers too if they wanted. The Twin Suns belonged to them all, and the nation of Tuskens would relocate down to the other side of the ocean, away from the cities. Khan's loyalists would be banished or conform to the new way of life, but not many of them subscribed to Khan's decisions as a leader. He was in it for himself. But Anakin's focus was outward, initially for Krayt Clan, but now for his nation. The dragon that killed Khan would receive new legendary status with their people, as she continued to roam her ocean freely, without the influence of those around her. While Anakin wasn't ever able to be the chosen one for the galaxy, in the fight between Jedi and Sith, it didn't mean darkness won. There would be challenges between those outside of Tatooine, but the Force would find its balance. It always did. Instead of bringing balance to the Force, Anakin did that for the people of Tatooine. The Sand Dwellers had peace with the City Dwellers. With the Hutts gone, the cities of Tatooine slowly evolved, and the planet itself did too. With a fully formed ocean, vegetation started to grow. Most of this was tropical, but the planet itself reacted to the changes made on the surface. The chief of the Tusken Nation would keep unity within his ranks, establishing new rules, bringing forth a new era for his people. He and Dar would have their own family, as she would follow the truth revealed by her visions, not just bringing forth strong roots, but locating the site for the Tusken Nation. It was far from the city dwellers, but not completely isolated. It allowed for the Tuskens and city dwellers to open communications. Things weren't easy, but the location allowed for both people to begin their unison with each other. Zira would be prideful in her son, who took a stand as a leader, and doing what all good leaders are capable of, taking care of their people. Anakin's legacy would be that of a true Nunahai, and that of the one who brought unity to the peoples of Tatooine. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to our patrons: Benjamin Wells, Alexandria Reese, The Beginning and End, M, Django Fett Clone, Nick 5098, INTJ Recluse, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tibbs, CC2024, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir Realm 1767, Darth Revan, Granddaddy Ban, Laliand, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewu 670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny Naguin, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Gullingsay66, Man Studios, Anakin003, Lord Draken, Fortis Legacy Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, The Man with the First Names, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. Before supporting the channel, smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. This obviously has a lot of references to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I've seen it like 5 times. I'm a little obsessed with it, but that was very intentional. I wanted to tell a story that was completely separated from the rest of the galaxy, and this is really like a really unique story that I'm very proud of, because it's just Tatooine. There's no outside influence going on, and I wanted it to be that way. I didn't want it to be Anakin gets raised by Tusken Raiders and then becomes a great Jedi or does whatever. Like, I wanted it to focus on him becoming something more for the people of Tatooine, to become something more than he's allowed to be outside of Tatooine. And I wanted Anakin's conflict to be with people that we don't know. I wanted it to be between the tribes, not with the Hutts or the crime families. I wanted this story to feel completely unique in the array of stories told on this channel, so that it is about Anakin, a child born of the Force, but doing something that is bringing balance, but not to the Force, but to the people of Tatooine. So I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.